So we're kind of stuck on this wall, but we're just getting hammered. So we're just shooting everywhere we can.
They started saying, hey, we're taking heavy fire. We need reinforcements. Staff Sergeant Holder said, hey, we're going to start pulling forward.
We get a call, first platoon's been engaged. We're going to back them up. This guy runs out in the middle of the street with an RPG, Nathan's vehicle, swung that 25 millimeter and put a 3-round burst in the guy's face. And I was just sitting here wondering who runs out in the middle of the street like that? So we push down, my corpsman engages. I'm thinking to myself, that was probably the only time out of any combat deployment where I thought, this is the end.
We've had to get back into the vehicle. It wasn't a fight that was really winnable.
And so we're pinned up against this wall. We kind of move back. Lieutenant Weber signaling us to come back to the vehicle. And so one by one, we kind of made our egress.
I'm suppressing all the windows, all the doors, and I get this feeling telling me that I should duck. As soon as I duck, a burst of machine gun hits right where my head would have been, above the vehicle. And I was like, fuck, I need to move.
And that was when it was, we were told that one of the scouts had been shot.
So I went back to the rear of the vehicle, started suppressing some more, and that's when I got hit.
George Armendariz gets hit by at least, 3 PKM rounds through his calf. I think it's pretty bad. We're gonna have to we need to get him out of here. They're pulling him back and starting to evacuate him. The look was like, man, this isn't good. We're out here exposed to all of this. What are we gonna do? So that's when I tell Holder, my platoon sergeant, Sam Holder, hey man, I need you, push your vehicle up, push it up, and I need you to basically get in front of the scouts so I can get him out of here. Without hesitation. Boom, he moves up.
Sam Holder, seeing this, brings his vehicle in front of them as a bullet block so the scouts can get in and get Armendariz into the vehicle. During this time, he's getting that brunt of those bullets.
And Staff Sergeant Holder was like, Kada, I need you to move forward. And I was thinking, shit, how much deeper are we getting into this? How much, further do we need to go? Because we're already taking heavy fire now. All of a sudden, the bullets just, we were like a magnet at that point. I remember hearing just ding, 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 all over across our vehicle.
I see 3 little silhouettes on the rooftop. I sat there and just started hosing it down.
And my main gun goes down. The 25 millimeter breaks. Kyle's down in there. He rips the gun apart, breaks the gun down, tries to rebuild it, puts it back together. He's tries to put it back in a cycle. Nothing. I give him my 240. Kyle's shooting with the 240. I've got my M16. And these guys are coming. They're coming at us, right?
Then the main gun on the vehicle goes down. When that happened, I had just happened to turn around. That's when I saw a puff of smoke come out the side of him.
RPG comes down and hits the turret. Kyle's shoulder to shoulder with me. And the RPG, I don't know how it misses me, but it hit Kyle on the side. He keys on his headset and he says, I'm hit. And he sits down, kind of slumps down in the turret. And I remember I'm holding my rifle and I look down at him and he's kind of slumped over and he's kind of, limp and incredibly pale.
At that time, I heard a snap. I remember he gets on the gun. He fires about a 10-round burst on his 240. And at that point, I remember looking to my right. And I seen, because he's standing up, I remember seeing blood at his ankles at that point. So I glanced up, and I just remember seeing him hunched over.
And I look across, and I see Sam Holder, he had slumped down now. And he's kind of he's a big dude, right? He wasn't going down the turret. But there's blood everywhere, all over him. And then the panic, the panic sets in. We're gonna die.
And I was able to pull him down, and he came down. It wasn't pretty, he had already bled in, internally, and his lungs had been filled with blood. And when he let out his last breath, it came out pretty violent. And so at that point, I knew that I would have to assume command of the vehicle.
I'm backing up like at full speed. Andrews is backing up at full speed. Holder's crew is still trying to get him out of there. It was such a panic, and like I don't know. I remember like talking on the radio to Black Six, to Gil, and I'm like, I don't remember what I said, but I remember the feeling I had, and it was like despair. Like I had done something catastrophic and I wasn't getting out of this. And I remember like just panicking, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but his tone and the way he said it like pulled me back, and it refocused me.
I got Paul on the radio, and I was just like, hey man, I know you're hurting, but we still got a mission, and the company's still in the fight, and I need you to get your guys back. Right? I mean, it was simple as that.
I didn't realize Holder got hit. I didn't realize Kyle got hit or Armendariz got hit, because I'm in the back of the LAV towards the end of the column, just kind of watching everything, doing my best to suppress the rooftops. We pull back out, and now we're on the main street. Paul Weber, Lieutenant Weber, randomly shows up, and he goes, help. And I remember thinking for a minute, like, what the fuck is this guy doing in the middle of the road? We're in a huge firefight here, and here he is, like just standing in the street. So it's wide open. And then he said it again, had a very desperate look in his eyes. So I jumped out and start chasing after Paul Weber.
Bamey ran out to join Paul and remain with his vehicle and his platoon. One of our corpsmen, Doc Navarrete, in the back of my vehicle, they were both ran out to try to help him.
I jump out, again, not knowing what I was expecting, anything like that. And I run to the first vehicle, but when I run to that vehicle, I can see guys on the rooftops. It's hard to describe the hissing sound, but at that time I knew there was fire going over.
I was like, this could be where I die, right here. And I remember thinking the only thing that I had to get me through it was I didn't want to be a coward in front of all my peers. So no matter what, I'm committed to this.
So we get back, and like, we're kind of like at this casualty collection point, like kind of in some cover, kind of not.
I just remember people bringing people to us, so we were kind of like the ambulance, if you will.
All of a sudden, we got back, the door opens up, and everyone piles out.
That's when Armendariz actually got off of his stretcher and grabbed Bamey's saw and jumped out and started laying down fire with the saw, which was pretty epic.
So all the corpsmen were there. They were trying to help me. I was in a rage. They put me in the log, from what I remember. I got out because nobody was covering the vehicles. Nobody was suppressing fire or anything like that. They were just focusing on getting burns out of the vehicle.
I remember seeing George jump out of the back of a vehicle. Trousers were all strip cut. They had cut him to wrap him up. He went and got another security position. Couldn't even tell he'd been shot.
I roll up, and they were getting Kyle out of the back of the LAV at this point, and we get him laid out on the ground. Still had a dip in the upper lip of his mouth.
I started doing an assessment, and I got down to the side of his flak, and there was an RPG sticking out of him.
And I'm shouting at him. I'm trying to slap him in the face. Kyle, come on, man. And getting no response back.
And I remember seeing like rounds like popping off the dirt. Like Burns and I were being shot at, I was like, holy shit, like there's an RPG in him that hasn't gone off.
He pulls the RPG out of Kyle's side, and man, and like this wash of like just blood and fluid and stuff just pours out.
And Doc was working on it best he could. Because I remember running by Kyle and patting him on the face and just telling, hey man, it's gonna be all right.
So I got back in the log. That time they were bringing Burns to the log. I picked him up and I brought him into the vehicle, and I looked at him. I could just tell by his face he was gone. And he still had a dip in his mouth, just like Burns would have.
They load Kyle into the vehicle. They got George back there now. We can't get Sam out of his LAV because he's too big. We can't get him out, so that whole vehicle has to leave. and go back to Bravo Surgical at Camp Fallujah.
I remember the Army, they ended up having tanks and whatever vehicles that were there lined up behind us. They ended up pushing forward, taking our spots, and then you could just hear the rounds going off, boom,
And Cameron just said, punch it.
We took off and we started heading out basically 1,000,000 miles an hour. Nick was working up Armadaris, and I had a couple moments with Burns. I pulled a dip out of his mouth.
And then Neverett. Neverett came over the radio and just says, hey, you can slow down.
We'd heard on the radio that medevac that was needed. As we're traveling back out into the city, I see Adam in the turret of his vehicle, but I know that Adam is not the VC. He's the gunner, right? Like there's a reason that he's not up in the turret.
That was the the longest ride, that I've ever taken.
Well, I remember as we were going down Michigan, we were trying to get to Camp Fallujah. I was calling in the Casovac on the radio. I just remember Pitcher looking at me, and I don't know whether he signaled like that or whether he was trying to shout at me or something, but Burns was gone. And I think I started downgrading his casualty on the radio. Deceased Marines are routine casualties. They no longer urgently need assistance. It was a horrible feeling.
It's bad when someone's getting called in as an urgent surgical, and then they lower the priority. That's how they passed away.